I am very excited today to have a great company featured on today's episode of Deck Specialist Podcast. Today I have John Moss and Robert Noose, both from a company that we are very familiar with. We've worked with for a long time. We've promoted their products. We've within the pages of Deck Specialist, we've seen several of their projects, including annual award winners that featured RailFX products. But both gentlemen from RailFX. Very excited to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, appreciate the opportunity.
So just how about we start with introductions and kind of background. So let's start with Robert. Robert, tell us a little bit about yourself at RailFX, your career at RailFX, and kind of what you do there.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've had the pleasure of being a part of this organization for the better part of 12 years. We originally started as just a cable railing manufacturer in northern Nevada, and have since grown into a complete railing portfolio company, an outdoor living company. I'm the national sales manager now for RailFX, the brand, and just really have a passion for outdoor living category, and I'm so happy to see it continue to grow. So I still enjoy it every day.
That's great. That's great. And John, give us a little bit of your history.
So yeah, I've been in the building materials industry for probably 34 years now, and my background was a manufacturer's rep. And a few years ago, started RailFX, and I was purchasing cables from Robert for my company. I had this idea to start a aluminum railing business using cable, and so I was able to partner with Robert. We purchased cables from Robert, and the business grew pretty rapidly with the network of people that I knew across the country. Being in the rep business for many years, I had several other people that wanted a similar product with the cables, and so it turned into a national program within a year's time, pretty much. And then full circle, all of a sudden, the company that Robert's working for comes back to me and says, "Hey, we want to buy your company," and I had no idea, or didn't even think I wanted to sell the company, and we worked out a deal, and so here we are today. This RailFX.
And everybody still has smiles on their faces, so it must be a good deal.
I did have hair before then, but
well, it's interesting. So back up a little bit. How long ago did you start RailFX?
RailFX was probably started in 2015, I believe. And,
okay, so it wasn't. Well, I guess I was going to say it wasn't that long ago, but for the category, that was kind of in the beginning quarter of cable railing coming out. Is that accurate?
Absolutely, yeah. Cable railing was growing very rapidly, and you could see it. And once you got in the business, then you start driving around and you start seeing it everywhere, right? It's kind of like you buy a new car, and pretty soon, you see all those cars. You didn't notice them until you had one. But it's very fast growing category, and Robert can speak to that. I mean, he's been involved in the cable side of it much longer than I have, and supplying cables to OEM companies, people that are. So I'd let Robert speak to that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my next question, which we'll get deeper into the company history and kind of what you were thinking starting it and everything. But we will jump to the obvious question of, if you weren't one of the first few, and I remember when cable railing started, and certainly all the advantages of it, but very quickly there were a bunch of players in the market, including, offshore companies just, sending in kind of, bulk low cost product. Robert, like, kind of walk us through that. And, do you remember, when John first approached you to buy railing, cable, what were you thinking? That
Yeah.
here John's trying to start a company in a category that very quickly became saturated.
Well, yeah, it is really interesting because it's really gone, 180 degrees. When I initially started with this company, and as we manufactured, fittings and cable only, the sell was really difficult because people were very opposed to cable railing. Still having this belief that cable railing, was climbable and there was a ladder effect, and there was a lot of education in the very beginning, probably about 10 years ago. And most of my sales pitch wasn't really the benefits of our product. It was, convincing people that it was allowed and, the code was changed. Then there was a lot of adoption, the market commoditized with, um, products like ballisters, and people were really looking for low maintenance products. There just seems to be a wash of products that were difficult to maintain, kind of a like new appearance. And then there was also kind of a trend to more modern minimalism and easy maintenance, more of a carefree lifestyle. So we saw more acceptance and adoption of cable railing. And um, our company first focused on the architectural community and the fabrication channel, where we were selling fittings for people who were welding custom railing systems, and it was mostly in the commercial marketplace. But more and more we saw homeowners call and ask whether or not it was something that they could not only use in their house but do it themselves. And at some point, um, there was a pivot, and there was a pivot to see that the residential market and the decking market, both interior and exterior, railings, was a huge opportunity. And we decided at that point, to kind of look at our portfolio of products and choose what we thought was the easiest to install, and the most to be adopted, kind of in the retail industry. So we began to make kits that didn't require any special tools. Was very DIY friendly, and started promoting a packaged product in the retail marketplace, through independent lumber yards or big box stores. That's when I had the pleasure of meeting John. And there for a while, as John had mentioned, he was in the building product industry, and he had repped a number of high profile companies. So I was really adamant at wanting to work with John, um, and it took some convincing to get John on board. But like he said, once you buy a Ford F-150, you soon realize that you're not the only person with a Ford F-150. So John saw the market opportunity, just kind of looking at railing specific, and said, I think there really is something. So John was out there helping push these prepackaged cable railing kits, to the retail marketplace. And it was then really kind of light bulb moment for John, knowing that we had only a portion of the overall uh,
Hmm.
demand. So we were able to provide the infill product that people wanted, but not the complete system. And in order for it to really genuinely be a DIY or a retail friendly program, it wasn't until John started RailFX, um, when I met John, and then John kind of started to really put together the RailFX program. I mean, it was it was so natural. I mean, in order to grow sales, obviously we had to support John and his efforts. And as John alluded to, it just the demand was there. And luckily we're at the beginning of the demand and able to service the demand, and grow like we did.
Yeah. So what do you think the secret to the early day success actually was? Because again, it's retailer shelves are already crowded, and in order to get shelf space, you have to prove that your product is going to be more compelling, generate more money per square inch than something else. And already within this decking category, you know you've got you've got countless decking lines of composites that have all come out with A, B, C, and D lines, with accessories, with lighting, with their own railing solutions and everything else. And then here you come along with, I don't want to discount it, and we'll get into what sets you apart, but I can just imagine John walking in with this box of, steel cable that looks, almost like what Home Depot sells in bulk off the reel that you just cut to length, and saying, hey, I need some extra shelf space because this stuff is really great. Alongside, I'm sure, the other sales reps from everywhere from China to Timbuktu that also whip out their cable, and it all looks like steel braided cable. How do you how did you guys, make a compelling proposition that set you apart from everything else that was going on in the market at that time?
Well, I mean, I can put my input. I don't know if John wants to start, but
Go ahead, Robert, and then I'll add. I've got some thoughts that
yeah, I think, really it was a service proposition. I mean, when you take the experience that John has and, what I witnessed during the days of trying to, place cable railing. I mean, really it was a service proposition. I mean, you'd mentioned we'll talk about product benefits here in a minute, but really our secret sauce was, to walk in um, into a dealer and to talk to a counter guy that has to be an expert in 20,000 SKUs, right? And
Right,
no matter what anyone tells you, there's a fear factor when it comes to railing because even though everyone pitches the fact that it's DIY friendly and it's easy to use, it comes with a lot of parts and pieces, and very little people want to take accountability or responsibility. I think the special sauce that John really developed was the fact that we own the quote. We basically said, hey, all you have to do is get some basic information and send it our way, and from there, we'll own the quote. So we always say, you know, if we quote it, we own it, and we take a lot of the responsibility and accountability and the fear away from the dealer. I often say, that our biggest competitors is not other brands that are in the store. Our biggest competitor is the person that doesn't want to sell railing because they're scared of it.
right,
So that's where we were able to make the biggest inroads. We were able to alleviate some of the anxiety that people had at quoting the railing system. So you know it's a very hands-on experience from the moment we receive the quote to confirming that everything is right. A lot of times, we're able to talk to the contractor directly, which is not the typical. A lot of times, dealers are often um, unwilling to you know allow you to talk to their customers, right?
right.
But we've earned their trust, and um, instead of playing the telephone game, able to go directly to the installer, work through those things, make sure it's right, and then deliver a product that is in fact easy to install.
yeah, I would say, I mean, backing up just a couple of steps, we took probably well over a month and went out and talked to many, many, many dealers and asked them, if we were to start a railing, what are the key pain points for you? What is it that would keep you from selling railing, or in our case, cable railing, right? And they talked about a lot of things. It's like, hey, it takes me, 5 to 10 days to get a quote back, and by that time my customer's frustrated, he's moved on, he went and bought something else. Or I get a quote and there's 20 pages, and every nut and bolt is listed out, and I don't even know what I'm signing up
Right,
for. And then I have to put it all in my system and then get the guy a quote, and we don't even know if it's going to meet their budget. So now I've got 3 hours tied up in this, and I don't even know if I'm going to get the job, and I could go sell a truckload of OSB and trusses and studs, for a framing package. So we took all that information, and that's when we put everything together to try to take all those objections out of it. And we'll talk about
mm,
that process a little bit more, in the podcast. But I think that was where the secret sauce was developed, right? We just listened to what the problems were all the way from the installer, how they receive the product, all the different things that they had issues with, the lumber dealer, the issues they had, and then the wholesaler that's actually selling the product to, along
Right.
with the decking and everything, to the lumberyard. So, and we continue to learn, right? I mean, we continue to evolve and to try to get better and better. But that's how we started, was listening to the customer and trying to
Yeah.
make something that made it easy for them.
Well, I think it's a great lesson, right? Because I mean, we've all been in the industry enough, long enough to have seen great products fail miserably because they just didn't consider the supply chain or the end user or how to train or how to have it installed accurately and effectively. They thought about, I see a lot of companies focus on the sale. Let's get it placed, let's get it bought, and then not consider, let's make sure it gets installed correctly so that that builder and that homeowner both have enough positive experience with the product that it leads to repeat sales and referrals. And it seems like you guys really thought through the process from top to bottom and have benefited from that.
Well, and I think, to kind of end that, or to, add to what you just, mentioned, Patrick, is, the company's only so good as how it responds, to issues and problems. And I think, the greatest benefit that we have, beyond kind of the service that we talked about, is the fact that things will go wrong, and they do go wrong, right? But it's how fast, we solve an issue. And, I think that's where we really win lifetime customers. When something goes wrong, we our culture is to say, well, how fast do you need it? And we solve it. If
Yeah.
it's some screws are missing, we FedEx them. Like, no questions asked. We just get it done and move on, because we know that so many people have 100 other things that they have to accomplish that day. So that's, I think, that post sales support aspect is just as important as the sales experience, right?
Yeah, I think that, what I'm, one of the things that I'm most impressed about RailFX and the team that you guys have there is that, I mean, obviously you've gone through dramatic growth over the years since your launch, and you're now, a very different looking company than you were when you launched. From John kind of running around knocking on doors, with a suitcase, it kind of felt like, to now, obviously you're not doing that anymore. Certainly, I hope not, John.
Yeah.
But you constantly learn and you evolve and you adapt, and obviously the challenges that the average contractor or DIYer is facing today is different than even a couple of years ago, right? And as products, substrates, decking, support materials, lighting, everything changes. You guys have to change as well. So talk about that evolution, right? Because it's obviously a manufacturing challenge, and I know on the business side of things, it's always nice when you're coming, you're envisioning launching and creating a new product that you say, okay, here's the lifespan, here's where we recoup the R&D, and then here's where that profit tail really, spikes. But inevitably, what happens is somewhere in the middle of that dream, once you're already launched, the market changes, or supporting products change, or now all of a sudden lighting's hot and you got to figure out a way to run cable through your support posts or something like that. And wow, we didn't think about that a year and a half ago when we launched the product. Shoot. Now we've got to come out with a different product or modify an existing product. So talk a little bit about the mindset at the corporate level that supports that constant learning and evolution of the products.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, part of it is the support we have. I think we've got 8 people in our engineering department, right? And these guys are constantly looking at ways to, you know, we'll come back from a market perspective and say we need to look at a different infill, or we need to look at lighting or whatever. But they are able to take and spend the time, and they've got, the equipment and the engineering know how to, do prototyping and come up with these new ideas and stuff that really help us to grow to the next level and meet market demands and changes in the market. And now even further being able to be part of a billion-dollar company that has, manufacturing worldwide. Now you can take and scale that very quickly,
Hmm.
um, and cost effectively, which is really, really amazing. Coming
Yeah,
from a
yeah.
little company that was working in a 10,000 square foot warehouse, cleaning the bathrooms, doing you were just you just had a small staff, and now you look back on it, and you're like, wow, I wouldn't have dreamed this in a million years. We'd be where we are at today. But it's pretty interesting story.
Well, and in a relatively short period of time in the grand scheme of things.
It is. It's very compared to most. It scaled very quickly, and that wasn't just me. That was partnering with some really good people. Early on.
Sure. But you have resisted, what it seems like a lot of companies when I say it's a crowded marketplace, I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. And, a lot of the mainline decking companies, have moved into the accessory lines
Yep.
of lighting and railing and things like that. So they are kind of pressuring that. And I think that is that's the easy solution, right? Is the one-stop shop. Just go, screw it. I'll just buy it all from one guy. I'm buying the decking from them. Might as well buy everything else from them, even though that may not be the best solution. While you guys have focused really exclusively on perfecting an excellent railing. So talk a little bit about that discipline to kind of stay in your wheelhouse and to continue to evolve and perfect uh, this line of railing.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because when you're a railing company only and you don't offer the decking and you don't offer any of the other components, right? You have to be the best at what you and offer the best value to where people have a compelling reason to look at you from a different perspective, right? They're going to buy the decking from one person and railing for somebody else. And that's where some of the original stuff that we started out with, finding out what the pain points were and answering those questions. And once the installer or the contractor has an experience and it's a pleasant experience, it's their go-to button, right? It's the easy button. It's easy for them to keep coming back,
Right.
and you just pick them off one at a time, so so that was in the beginning. Now being part of a company that also has decking and different things, I mean, you're starting to they do all the fasteners, they do a lot of other things. So now we're able to bolt on some of that other stuff at some point, that is going to take us to the next level.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so talk a little bit about your company culture and what sets you apart. What sets the product apart? What sets the company apart from everybody else out there? Like, we have a pretty significant audience. Um, I'm sure many of them are already familiar and accustomed to working with you, but many aren't. So what is it? What is that pitch? What is that compelling point that these builders and contractors, which God bless them, we love them, and as you said, once they find something they like, they usually stick with it.
Yeah.
So we find that within tools and fasteners and decking boards and everything else, that I'm just this. This is all I pitch because I'm familiar working with it. I know it holds up, and at the end of the day, if it fails, I know that the homeowner is going to call me to complain, and it reflects on my company. So this is the stable of products that I offer and I use. So when you're trying to bring a new product into that arsenal, what is it that you talk about that sets your product and your company apart?
Well, Robert mentioned, about us quoting, getting quotes turned around quickly. So, but what I would say is we treat every single project. There's not a off the shelf project, right? Every single project is engineered for that deck, right? We take their measurements and we engineer it, and we decide, we show them where every post goes, and we value engineer that to where every part works for that deck. They don't have a bunch of leftover material or whatever, and it all goes together hand in glove. And that makes it super easy. So when they get a quote, Robert mentioned another thing that's very key. When we quote it, we own it. So if we make a mistake, which mistakes happen, everybody has an off day, right? You forget a set of cables or you forget a post or something like that. The contractor's not going to pay more. You go to some yard, and say, "Hey, I want to buy this," and they give you a quote, and then you find out you're short a couple parts. You'd already quoted your customer; they already expected a fixed price, and you come back and say, "Hey, I forgot two posts. It's going to cost you $300 more." Nobody's happy about that. So we
Right.
took say if we quote it and you give us good good information and we miss something, we send it to you no charge. Like Robert said, how quickly do you need it? Do we need to overnight it to you? We're not going to send it. We don't even send it to the lumberyard. We'll send it directly to the job site. So they don't have to go to the lumberyard, get that part and spend extra time. We understand time is really, really valuable now more than ever, with the cost of labor and everything.
Right.
We try to make it super simple when it shows up. Top rails are 20 feet up to 20 feet long. So they don't have a bunch of splices,
Yep.
and there's companies out there that have a bunch of 8-foot pieces that you put together, with splices, and it works, but if you could put it all in one piece, it's much nicer. Just
Sure.
one less spot that you're going to have this where there's a seam, and then I think the last part is that we really focused on is for the contractor when he leaves, he doesn't want to come back and see that job because if he comes back,
Right.
he's not coming back to give him another bill. He's coming back to fix something, right? And if the people we're talking to that are built decks, they understand decks move, right? It's a wood structure, it expands, it contracts. So you tension all those cables, and the traditional way that you would tension a cable was with a threaded rod and a nut on the end, right? So you tighten that nut up, and there's extra threads hanging outside of the nut. And you got to cut it off and put a cap on. We've got it now where you can just take a 3/16 Allen wrench and you just put it in the fitting in the end, give it another turn, and the cable's tensioned. If for some reason the deck moves and the cable's not tight enough, so when the contractor leaves, he gives that Allen wrench to the homeowner, demos it for him, shows him how. Most 99% of the homeowners will put that Allen wrench in there, give it one turn, and be done. But if it's the traditional way where they're going to need a sawzall or a hacksaw and nuts
Right.
and all this different stuff to take care of it, it becomes more problematic. And chances are that the deck builder is going to get a call back saying, "Hey, this cable, I got one cable that's not tight." So that probably is, I mean, the top three things that
Yeah.
I would say really make it easy and drive people to come back, and we solve their problems.
Yeah. Robert, talk a little bit about that because, there's, we obviously write a lot of stories. We cover a lot of things in the industry. I mean, I think we have a pretty honest understanding of the market that we deal in. And one of those challenges is, is builder and contractor education. Everybody considers themselves a craftsman in the trade. Um, Everybody considers that, and most of us guys aren't the best at reading instructions. We figure we can figure it out. And if there's a few bolts left over at the end, that's just generous on the company's behalf. But, clearly we assembled it correctly. So continuing education, especially of new product lines, new concepts, is always a challenging thing in the trades. But it seems like, you have artfully incorporated the education and installation into the quote process to make sure, I don't want to say to save the contractor from himself,
Right.
but, to just make sure that when you're working with this, especially with a safety driven element like railing, right? We hear these horror stories of, when there's a deck related injury, I think more than half the time it is railing related. And, when you go back and you look at that, it usually comes down to the installation being inadequate. So how how does that work? And, how is the company, balance that to make sure that, your product actually is installed correctly, but also that doesn't create a time or frustration burden on behalf of the contractor?
Yeah, I think we do it in a number of ways. We don't always have the luxury of being at every job and being a resource for every installer. But what we do right is a couple things. One, um, the installation videos that we had are now have been updated in more of an illustrative presentation versus a recording of someone installing it, and that really gives someone a kind of a 3D perspective of how to install our product correctly. um, the second part is we have a national team that goes out and makes themselves available, specifically for first time installers. you know they're they never objected, being a resource for that person, and they'll never install the product, but they'll be there as a person that kind of guides, them through any initial questions. You know, it's pretty funny to see. A lot of people are hesitant even today to install cable railing. A lot of them say, "I don't know how to do that," whatever.
Right.
Product is, it has better, what, about 25 years of development in it, and now it's really, sticking a round peg into a round hole. I mean, it's really really simple. And when you kind of talk someone through their first run, the light bulb clicks, and then they're like, okay, I got it from here.
Then
Thank
they're
you.
hooked.
Right. But to kind of go back to what John was mentioning, I mean, when we value engineer a specific project, you know we eliminate that process, as you mentioned, Patrick. Someone isn't modifying a generic product that was meant to do 80% of the install. Our product was meant for that job. I think one really important thing that we didn't mention yet is that when it ships and it arrives to the job site, right? The boxes are labeled. It says post A, post B, post one, post two, and that person will refer to a layout that we physically did, and we'll, uh, you
Hmm.
know, um, 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 we'll why can't I think of the word? We'll basically put a description on every post, and label that post. And so this person doesn't even need to open the box to figure out what the box is and where it needs to go. So they're really like just dropping boxes, pulling product out, installing it, and everything's pre-drilled. So again, goes back to the whole theory. When we value engineering so much, it's at some point it's just sticking a round peg through a round hole.
Yeah, I would say
I thought,
too that, with modern technology, it's pretty easy. I mean, I can tell you, Robert, myself, multiple people within our company, somebody's got a question, they're not, it's hard to talk through it on the phone. We'll just get on FaceTime. They'll show it to us and say, "This is what I'm doing." You're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I get it. Do this, do this, do that." And in 5 minutes, it's done, and they're happy and on their way installing.
right.
So, we use a lot of different methods to help people, especially on the first time. The first time is the hardest. After that, you rarely hear from them again. They're off and running like riding a bike. So
That's amazing. So, in kind of to wrap this up a little bit, what are kind of the key takeaways that you want, whether it's a homeowner, whether it's, and we'll get into, I think we're going to have you back and we're going to talk about specific products and details of those products in another episode. But, what messages do you want to leave with, the homeowner, the contractor, the retailer who's considering cable railing? Why should they look to RailFX?
Uh,
or
I guess I can answer that question. I mean, when you look at each segment, I mean, to the homeowner, I mean, one, our product is over engineered. It's held to a higher standard than, just what the minimum expectation is. Our cable is tried and true. we're really the only company that broadcasts all of our, engineering data, drawings. If it's a high profile installation, commercial installation, a stadium, parks and recreation, airport, our fittings and our cable are most likely being installed, because it's tried and true, and it's backed by data, engineering data, right? So without a doubt, I'm very comfortable that our product, is far superior to a lot of products that are currently in the market. So from a homeowner's perspective, feel comfort that it's, well engineered or over engineered. It's practically, zero maintenance, but it's, low maintenance. To the, contractor, we ensure that the product is right. We make them look like, champions and the craftsmen that they are, with our value engineering. But most importantly, expect zero callbacks, and that's the most important, aspect of our
Right.
product, because it's well engineered. They'll never have to, go back to fix a problem, and I think that's what's most important to them.
Yeah, that and we offer a lifetime warranty to the original owner, and if there's ever an issue, it's not just the homeowner that's taken care of, but it's also the contractor because we pay for the labor to reinstall it. I haven't had it happen yet, so it's we haven't had to do that yet, but our written warranty is it's a limited lifetime warranty, including labor, to
That's
reinstall,
amazing.
which is what sets us apart. There's not a lot of people out there that do that. And Robert mentioned about over engineered. There's a lot of people out there that kind of got into the cable railing business over time. They took their original framework for pickets and adapted it for cable, right? But you put all
Hmm.
that tension on cable with 250 pounds of tension per cable times 10. So you start seeing some post bow and some of those sort of things.
Right.
We started this as a cable rail, right? So we engineered it to support the cable and stuff like that. And and so to Robert's point, it's very well engineered. It's over engineered from a safety perspective.
That's amazing. Well, we also, consider ourselves kind of responsible parties in the companies that we vouch for, within the pages of deck specialists. So, we go through our own due diligence before we ever write an article or ever agree to run an advertiser. And we turn away more than we say yes to these days. But we do firmly believe that we're vouching for a company when we support them within the pages, and that's why we wanted to have you on board, today to talk more about the product, because we do firmly believe in your product and what you guys are doing there. We know that you support the marketplace and our contractors who are readers of deck specialists, and we've seen the product, in action, in some very, very amazing decks. Ranging from your kind of basic entry level deck, for the first time homeowner, up to multi-million dollar projects that are really just spectacular. So we're very, very happy to have you on board. In closing, if people want to learn more about RailFX or your product line or where to get them, where should they go?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, certainly our website is a great resource. We've got our installation instructions and our drawings and all, beauty shots, give them some inspiration of what it could look like. And we're even one of our initiatives this year is to get a photo contest to get more before and after pictures because this is truly
Right.
a change to the scenery for people. People are spending millions of dollars for these views now, and they're taking those old pickets out of there that block that beautiful $1 million view and putting
Right.
something you can see. So that's what we're hoping to really portray to people, for this year.
Well, and that's what I especially love is that you guys are really experts in, number one, a functional, safe railing system. That's at the forefront, no matter what it is that you guys do. But the second biggest thing is, your specialty really is in opening up that deck and giving people their view back. And it's an amazing thing, the transformation that a deck goes through when they go from just a standard wooden picket rail system to a glass or cable rail system, and all of a sudden the entire property's opened up and the expanse of that deck is opened up. It's an amazing transformation that I encourage everybody to experiment with. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if another 5-10 years down the road, you guys are on every deck in America.
Yeah, that's the goal.
All right, guys. Well, listen, thanks for the time today. And we look forward to having you back to dive deeper into product details and share all that with our audience. But thanks again for taking the time.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick.